Well, Dale, taking the topic of the culture that you've seen and grow, and in a previous setting, we talked a bit about some of the concerns you've had from time to time about ensuring the culture will stay consistent and what led to those concerns, or maybe some sleepless nights. When a leader, in particular a church leader, has that feel that hey, there's something happening here that maybe we need to take a closer look at, what are some strategies or what are some signs or early warning signals that are utilized to be able to put things in motion to ensure that the culture does remain the way that you've intended here at Redemption?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that you can look at. You can look at the general metrics and all that, but I think there are lagging indicators. Like, for example, if you're looking at attendance for your metric to make sure you're on culture, well, you know, your loss of people, a loss of enthusiasm may not rear its head till you're awful far down that road of getting off mission and getting off target. So I think you got to have some other measurables in place. One of the things we've always talked about, when you stop hearing the stories, you know, the anecdotal success of the mission, for a lack of a better term, that's when you've got to start questioning, are we going up? So let's just, for example, say you're having an event that you've had for 6 years going, and the event seems like a success. Let's just say it's a men's breakfast, which we haven't had for a long time around here. Cool thing, great.
Sounds good.
Great churches have it, yeah. But let's just say you're having that, and 5 years down the road, you're still having a decent turnout for the men's. I mean, it's not what it was, but it's still there. Guys that come seem to enjoy it, but yet you can tell there's not a lot of story. Like, you're not hearing about life change that's happened. You're not hearing about wrecking the roof that's happening. You're not hearing those kind of things. You're not experiencing those anymore. So then you pull back and you start saying, are we just having this event because we've always had it? Or is it really fulfilling the purpose of why we started it in the first place? And you can't be afraid to pull the plug on something. Even good things, because, you know, the old corporate world book, Good to Great, how good can be the real enemy of great. If it's good enough, you know, yeah, it's good. But great could happen if you pulled the plug sometimes on something that's good for something that's far better. So as leaders, you got to constantly be in a state of evaluation. And around here, we pretty much do that after everything we do. Like, if we had Super Bowl, a while back, we had a Super Bowl Sunday where we had a fun opportunity to celebrate. It's Super Bowl Sunday, everybody wear the jerseys. We did some, you know, sermon time where we answered a lot of subjects, did a lot of topics. And it was fun, and it was great and energetic, and it felt almost like an Easter Sunday here. The energy, the attendance, the baptisms, all those things. But afterwards, what we do is like, okay, did that accomplish the reason we did it? And did it accomplish it as such that it was something we want to think about doing again next year? What could we do better to make it be sticky, reinforcement? And so we pull up after that event. We've already had a debriefing about what can we do to make it better if we're going to do it again, and you know, what are some things that we could do, what worked, what didn't work, you know. And you constantly got to be in that state of doing that to make sure that everything's staying focused on the mission, on the reason you're doing it. And so I think that's a big one right there, is that we've always had that mentality that we're not going to do anything that just to do it or because it's on the calendar. One example of that for us is Good Friday services. We don't have one every year. It's a great thing to celebrate what Jesus did on the cross for us. But as far as having a service to celebrate that, we do it every few years here, because so many times I've been to those type services where pretty much it's just we're doing it because we've already done it, and it's not really serving a different purpose. It loses its. And so anyway, I guess that I'm talking a lot, but I guess the point being is you just got to constantly be evaluating, is this on mission? Let's start with the why. Why did we do it? Is it still doing it? And you got to be able to do that.
Listening to you speak, it hits me the old adage that's been said by many, and you and I have talked about this. When we're in our comfort zone, we're really in a space that's going to lead us to mediocrity. And when I hear you and the process you and the team use to evaluate, it seems as if it's a focus on ensuring you're pushing yourself from your comfort zone.
Yeah, absolutely. Just let me give you an example. 2 years ago, LG brought up the idea of making a big deal out of Super Bowl Sunday and doing what we did. And when we started talking about it, I thought, I don't like this. It seems too something, I just didn't think I would like it. I didn't know that it really would, but here's what I thought. I thought everything I've ever tried for the first time, just about, I had that thought. Almost everything. And so let's give it a shot. If it doesn't work, we don't have to do it again. Or we can wait and do it differently. And we did it, and it was fantastic. And I think, how many times have people just totally put an idea in the shredding machine that they didn't give a chance and see what God could do with it? And so we did it. We loved it. Now we've done it 2 years in a row, and it's been a great, I think, shot in the arm for us in terms of people inviting their friends, and they get to hear the gospel in a new, fresh way, and we get to have fun in the process.
And they get grilled meat as they enter the building.
That's right.
I mean, it doesn't get any better on a Sunday morning,
right? Who doesn't
right?
love barbecue on Sunday?
At 9 a.m. or 8 a.m.
right,
in that
exactly.
regard. It's something special. So thank you, LG, for that idea in that piece. And I'm sure there's been some things that's been brought to the table that maybe you or the team were really pumped about, and as you thought about it, maybe never made the final cut to get rolled out.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Or even yet, something that didn't seem to work, but God had a different plan in mind. So the year was early 2000s. We were in our Kathy Lane building, CCJ, and our outreach team, I had a little outreach team I put together of some mostly ladies from the church who were really passionate about reaching out to the community. And we talked about how could we come up with an idea to help our community to get Jesus' name out in our community. So they said, well, let's do a soup day, a free soup day for those who maybe, need some extra help. They've ran out of money before they ran out of month, and so we did all this planning. We advertised. We had flyers to do this soup day, soup and sandwich day at the church. We had guys holding up signs in the door out in the front of the road trying to get people to come in, and 2 people showed up. And there was 20 of us working it, right? And one of the ladies who helped organize it and was passionate about it, she was so discouraged because no one showed up. And to be honest, I probably was too. Then the next day at Sunday service, I think there was about 15 or 16 people. Back then, we would come forward to place membership with the church. There was about 15 or 16 people, most of which who were a part of that day, came forward and put their membership with CCJ at the time. And it was as if God was saying, you know what, you thought this was to feed the poor, but this was to bring a team together to excite people about a mission that's greater than themselves. And so a lot of times the events won't happen, we'll put it into them, or a lot of times they will happen. They seem like they're not successful by many metrics, but God was using it anyway. And so you just got to ask yourself those questions over and over and over again.
Yeah, I love that. What a great example. And going back to a previous episode, you talked about the power of asking why and link that to the purpose. And just with that example with the soup and the 2 and the 15 or 16 the very next day, and God's intent for all of that, states that sometimes the answer to the why doesn't come at once.
It doesn't.
Or maybe it doesn't come immediately.
No, sometimes it's God's why, not ours, and we don't know. He's far ahead of us, and absolutely. And there's been many times that's happened down through the years, different variations of that. And so, just constantly keep focused on the mission and doing what you're supposed to. And then, step back later and say, well, how could we have done this differently? Or what could we do to change it up the next time. And, that's important to do. It's sometimes we only look at numerical measurements of people, when in reality there's far more at stake than that. I don't know how many times I'm supposed to have this meeting and the people don't show up for the meeting except for one person. And then me and that one person had this deep conversation that we would have never had if there was other people around the table. And so you just got to be open to what God's going to do. And maybe that's the key. Just wake up and say, God, what do you want to do with this? What do you want to do with me today? How can you use me today? And I wish I did that every day. A lot of days I'm like, oh, I got to be here, 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 and I'm not thinking that way. But man, when we do, it's amazing what He'll do.
It certainly is. And, Darryl, you talk about data points that sometimes maybe we get too involved in, those KPIs, those key performance indicators. I love it when I see on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, where maybe a leadership coach has changed that to key people indicators in that aspect. And it really has me ponder a lot. Have we went too far with data and forgot about the touch points that really matter with the people-to-people relationships?
Yeah, are we talking about baseball or church?
Well, don't get me in. I'm still a baseball card guy for the 60s and 70s. Give me the 3 or 4 main stats, and I'm okay.
Analytics and numbers are great tools. They're terrible drivers of things. And so, I think you're right. And I think we've talked in a previous episode about people being a big focus. We have a saying, people trump policy. Now, does that mean we don't have any policy? No, absolutely not, because those policies are there for people, to help the people. But you can't allow the policy to be the commandment. People are love God, love people. And so you kind of work through and develop that. And I think you're right. I think that people is where it's at. God and people. That's what it's all about. And so as long as you keep the focus on loving God and loving people, the rest kind of works itself out.
Couldn't say it any better. I just appreciate your consistency with that. Not just you, but your entire team. Shifting back to the culture aspect, and we've talked again in a previous episode about the multi-site strategy and how that played a part in moving from CCJ to the redemption story. I'm sure, as you and I have talked about off camera a bit, as any leader, from time to time, there's just some doubts that enter in.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that sustaining that culture, you had some questions about how you were going to be able to piece that together as you went to multi-sites. Talk about that process a bit.
Yeah, there certainly had a lot of doubts, even after the decision was made. Sometimes doubts. We started out wanting to be a church planting church. We felt like we need to plant churches because we were kind of a plant ourselves. And then we were introduced to this idea of multi-site, and the idea that it has a much greater success rate and much cheaper and much quicker than trying to plant churches. Church plants fail actually an incredibly high percentage of the time. I don't know how many people realize they're not. Like probably 1 in 5 make it 5 years down the road. So we found this strategy that we felt like God calling us to after we were exposed to it. And so then you begin, okay, where do we go with these sites? And that's probably been a lot of the doubt questions for me at times. So our first thought process was early in the thought processes. We had people coming from Spencer County, Santa Claus area, a great number of people, and we thought, well, then that's where we need to go, right? I mean, we need to plant a church there. There's only a handful of churches in that area. None of them really doing exactly ministry the way we would do it. They're doing great ministry, but just not the way we would do it. And so we begin the process. Okay, we're going to Santa Claus. And door after door would be shut. A lack of real estate space, a lack of opportunity, a lack of this. And through that process then, some friends of ours who were driving the church from Martin County, from Lagodi, began to really be open to this multi-site idea and at least doing pieces of what we do, like a youth ministry in Logoti. And so they said, we're buying this building, this empty, shopping space. We're going to buy it, and we're only going to use part of it. Would the church want to use part of it for a youth ministry of some kind up there? And I said, well, I don't know that we'd want to go that route, but I do know this: God is calling us to put churches in multiple locations, and I think that would be a beautiful spot. And that began the conversation about going to Logoti, and literally not just, it's the first multi-site, but it's the first time we actually had the location before we decided exactly where we were going to go. And so the partnership with the Hawkins family, Jordan and Brooke Hawkins, who have the Hawkins Healthcare Center there in that place, began. And so we ended up going there. And so there was a lot of doubts, like, I thought we were supposed to go south. And, Paul had this in the Bible. He thought he was going one place. The Holy Spirit closed the door and took him to another place. And we feel like that has happened with us a number of times. So then Tell City, once we really felt called to go to Tell City, which is our second multi-site location, real estate again began to be a problem, finding the spot. We thought we were going to rent a location. We thought we were going to do it totally differently. We were going to tear up, sit down. Maybe it's a theater, maybe it's a school auditorium. Maybe we're going to start that way. And we began to look, and again, doors began to kind of not really be open in the way that we thought they would. And and we had looked really early on at this junior high school that said empty, for years. And we said, well, let's circle back around and let's meet with the owner there. And that began the process, and we ended up going there, and it's a beautiful campus and launched, and just some cool things happen there. They have a gymnasium, and so it's used almost every day. And just so many cool things that are going there. But in the midst of that, still doubts. Like, our budget is as close as it could be already, and we're going to open another campus. Once we made the decision to do that, that's what was going through my mind. Did we pull the trigger too soon? Even though we actually started much later than we intended. COVID pandemic times kind of slowed the process down even more. But then I just always rest in what one of our elders, Jeff Kirby, who was with me, he's been with me since the early days of the church. Jeff Kirby would always say, and he's very conservative financially, fiscally, so it's not like he's like, let's just throw money away. But he would always say, we're not supposed to decide, do we have the money to do this? We're supposed to decide, God, are you wanting us to do this? And if God is wanting us to do this, he doesn't run out of money. He finds ways. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, so he'll make it work. And so our question is less, we do have to crunch numbers and determine things, but for the most part, our question as a leadership is, God, where are you calling us to go? What are you calling us to do? And where he calls, he provides. And who he calls, he equips. And so we just trust in him in that. And so I usually start out losing sleep, and then I tell myself, God's going to be up all night. He's got this. I'm going to go ahead and sleep. And that's the way I roll.
I like that. So I think you just described your strategic plan for determining when sites or where sites are, asking God. But can you share some insight on the overall process as you and the elders and your team ponder?
Yeah. So here's how it works. The first question that you start to ask is, are there people driving from a particular area to come to church here? And the reason being is they're driving. But if they're driving 45 minutes, half hour, there's plenty of their friends and neighbors who would also benefit there, but they're not going to drive that distance. Very few people would do that. And so is there people driving from that area? That's number one. Number two, is there any church in that area doing the style of ministry that we're doing? Because we don't want to duplicate the process. We're a kingdom-minded church. I believe there's only one church. There's a lot of different names on the doors. There's a lot of different styles of ministry. But Jesus' church is the only church, right? And so I'm not about going into an area where somebody's doing it the way we're doing it. But as we always say, if you're going to do something, if you're going to reach people who aren't being reached, you got to do something that's not being done. So first question, are there people coming? Second question is there anybody doing what we're doing there? That's one and two. And the third is what kind of opportunities do we have there? Whether it be space to do it, whether it be people that can come alongside us, whether it be partnerships that are in the community that we already have partnerships with. So those three questions kind of drive where we're going next and what we're doing in terms of our multi-site strategy. And people say, well, how many do you see you guys having? And I'm like, I don't have a number in mind. I like one of my good friends who does multi-site, he'll tell you right now how many he's got planned for the next 10 years or whatever. That's not the way we're rolling. We're rolling as, there may be 4, there may be 5. God may open the doors to 10 or 12 others. I have a friend in Quincy, Illinois, that he's the first guy we saw doing multi-site strategy in rural communities successfully. It's amazing to see what he's doing. Church is just booming. And one of the things that has happened to them is they've had churches come to them and say, hey, our church is dying. We have great resources. We just don't have people anymore. We want to be a part of the kingdom. And they have turned their church over to the crossing, and they've made it a multi-site, and it's boom, take off and go. They have an old church in a town that's, I don't know, the town's probably not got more than 200 people, and the campus runs about 500 people.
Wow.
And so just that kind of
it's transforming.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's kind of the way we choose that and where we go with it.
Darryl, as we bring this episode of the Redemption story to a wrap or to a close, want to jump back, and we may have talked about this as we introduced what we were trying to do, but one thing you, LG, the staff are consistent with your messages is that you want those that are coming and hearing on Sunday to go beyond Monday through Saturday and bring that in. As I sit and listen as we record the Redemption Story episodes, it comes to me that many times as we look to grow, we look to what webinar, what book, what seminar can I purchase to help me in that regard. But when I hear the Monday through Saturday that you want everyone attending Redemption, members of Redemption, to take out, it's really about one-on-one conversations with people and bringing value and sharing value, just as you are for everyone who hopefully are blessed to have an opportunity to hear from you on the Redemption Story. And just as I feel blessed, this opportunity, you're adding value to me and to many others just through conversation. And your messages have that opportunity every Sunday to allow us to search inside, to look at our relationship with God and with Jesus. And then throughout the week, it's right in front of us. There's opportunity to bring that value further and more clearer perhaps to ourselves.
Yeah, it's just important. I think if you preach for Sundays only, you're missing so much, because we live in the Monday through the Saturday. And so you've got to be able to preach and teach and apply to everyday life and get your people and encourage and motivate and excite your people to go do it. And I think one of the things I say often that came out of a sermon series that Drew Thurman and I did years ago is that we want to give people a daily encounter with Jesus through the words that we speak and through the actions that we take. And that's really, in a nutshell, what we want our people to do.
Well, you're doing that, brother.
Well, thanks.
We appreciate you, all of us, and you and your team and everyone, because I know Darryl's been very clear. He doesn't want this to be focused on Darryl. And we promise there's going to be other faces that get into the episodes
That's
going
right.
forward.
Absolutely. Don't want it to be, because it's not been about me. If it was, we wouldn't be here, because I fall so short in so many ways, and I'm not just talking about being a sinner. That's a given. But just even in my giftedness and talent, there's a lot of things I can't do, but God has given us the right people, and I have such a wonderful team here. Not just talking about our volunteers, which are fantastic, but my staff team here. Wow, it's awesome. I feel really blessed.
Well, we talked about consistency again as we wrap up here, and for you and the team, you all, and the manner of which God is represented through each one of you, how Jesus is represented, that consistency is why people are so comfortable and so much a part of the redemption story.
Well,
Thank
Kevin.
you for
Look forward
sharing
to
this, man.
Love it and look forward to doing some more.
God bless you.
Thank you.